Neurodiversity encompasses all of humanity. We're a neurodiverse species, right? Some people in this room may be neurotypical. Some people may be neurodivergent in all kinds of interesting ways, but we're all part of the spectrum of human neurodiversity. We're a neurodiverse room. So, I think all of this stuff applies to everyone's awakening. Everyone gets to find out. I don't think you should have to be autistic or bipolar or dyslexic to get to do weird stuff with your brain and liberate your stuff by moving in exciting, fun ways. I think that's something everyone ought to do, because everyone has a startling, beautiful, creative, true self in there. Everyone. You don't have to be a member of a pathologized neurological minority in order to be awesome.
Fall, a cathartic arrival only to be abandoned for something new. I lay on the floor and I sought to dwell there. I wanted in. I thought I was just seeking a band. I thought I was only seeking access to music. This strange sound. David Crosby compared it to electric New Orleans jazz, the sound where everybody is simultaneously playing lines, soloing together, so it might seem you might have to hear simultaneous ideas leading from opposite spectrums of the sound to create the connections that make the music work. And that guitar line on top was always deceptively simple compared to the intense rhythmic harmonic action unfolding in the layers below. There was always something throwing some sharp phrase or hiccup that might distract you from the core of the river flowing in whatever direction the winds might blow. I could not follow. I lay there trying and trying. If I became preoccupied with something, a turn of phrase, a beautiful reinvention on the melody, a rhythmic variant, a little extra gusto to a vocal refrain, one moment of distraction could derail my train of thought and I would miss what came next, or how it came to be. I was learning to listen, you might say, but in order to hear, I would have to be as creative and agile as the musical team I was seeking to follow. Displeasure was my spirit. Every time I got lost in a train of thought and missed that moment, when the band traversed from a meandering theme into something purposeful, emotive, and excellent, I wanted to hear how the discoveries would unfold. I didn't want to hear about myself. And yet, one day, I did realize I was clearly reflecting on my own life, in great detail, in fact. This was most unexpected, and with a moment's consideration, I concluded this was a good thing. Now, sometimes I would arrive at the door of realization, and a great pull of gravity would take hold, as though to draw me towards an open door in the mind, and I would catch myself going there, only to respond with shock and surprise and consciously pull back. Whatever it was, my own judgment, my own awareness, became my hindrance. And I did not know again how to approach that open door. These moments of mental freedom, unexpected, a rare occurrence, a fascination. How could I prepare myself to not be swayed if arrival should come again? This was exploration. If I could not be open to it, I would not be able to discover this thing. Therefore, I told myself, maybe if I pretend this is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. And unexpectedly, that was the trigger. Imagine a strand of DNA, 1,000 meters high, or 1,000 miles, doesn't matter. And imagine an elevator that shoots up through that spiraling path in the space of an instant, straight to the top. Laying there on my back, I experienced this sensation, spinning. And it's like I spiraled up into the sky together with my environment. And when I arrived, I was no longer looking through a window into reality. For the first time, I felt no separation between myself and reality. It went deeper still. My memory became flawless. I was free of all contradictions within myself. In fact, I could recognize my bad points and my good points equally and not be swayed. And I was free of all contradictions within myself. In fact, I realized The universe is big enough to hold all contradictions, with enough space for each to exist independently of its contrast. In the present moment, this was no longer a place of observation. It was a place where all history, since time without beginning, is made. I had entered this eternal realm, and I was sober, and this meant for me that if I wanted to go there, all I had to do was listen to the Grateful Dead, and I could open the door at will. And after trying some psychedelic drugs a few years later, actually, that portal came crashing down, and I actually lost the gift that I gained for a little while there. And so I gained a common sense approach to all phenomena, and I realized that by simply pondering the natural laws of the world around us, even the complex questions of birth and death were not so far out of reach. The religious world I'd grown up with, Jewish, was far more confusing, for example, than the straightforward observations of where I'd now arrived. Furthermore, I realized that my life is connected to the strand of life that has existed since time immemorial, each of us actually, and had this life ceased for even a moment, it would be impossible for me or anybody else to exist. And the sun and moon and the planet, they had observed all of this. By seeing through the eyes of the sun, reality was on full display. My memory, so that was this amazing awakening. What was really intense.
Because I think that's like the fine line, and this is just me speaking from what I know to be true. It's certainly not what anyone in a very traditional model would say. However, my take on talking to spirits or seeing entities or seeing things, that it's actually very real and it's another form of information. However, for it to be accurate and a potential tool of transformation, we need to be in our bodies and able to both witness it and be aware that we are witnessing it. So I just wanted to say something about that because I'm sure that applies to some people in this group. That's certainly been a part of my journey. So while we're on the spiritual emergence definition, which I'm sure you guys are very familiar with, to add that the paranormal does happen, and frequently we're opening gateways of greater perception to different levels of truth that are there. However, are we in our body? And do we have witness consciousness? And I think that is what differentiates a healing paranormal experience from something that's more shaky or untenable. I'm really trying not to use mental health terms. Make sense? Like, we're talking about where are we going that we can integrate and use for our own healing or other people's healing versus which is going to spin us out and send us into greater crisis. That's the differentiation of it. Okay, we have the first definition. What is extreme trauma? Okay. This is so tacky, guys. I went to Wikipedia. Trauma, which means injured in Greek, is often the result of an overwhelming amount of stress that exceeds one's ability to cope or integrate the emotions involved with that experience. A traumatic event involves one experience or repeating events with a sense of being overwhelmed that can be delayed by weeks, years, or even decades as a person struggles to cope with the immediate circumstances, eventually leading to serious long-term negative consequences, often overlooked by mental health professionals. Should I go on, or is that enough of a definition? Are you guys sort of steeped in this in school?
That's good.
It's good. It's enough. Yeah. This is pages of this, but it's like a variety of events, and you guys are like psych students. So, what is the relationship between spiritual emergence and extreme trauma? Right? Okay, we've sort of said here's a kind of long spiritual emergence definition and a brief trauma one because we're all up in CIIS. We're up to our eyeballs in trauma. So what's the current relationship and what's the point of this? From my perspective, extreme trauma can have several effects. One of them is shocking the system into fragmenting into different parts, e.g. the one who was abused and the good girl who was never involved, for example. It can also lead to other interesting effects like repression, either repressing the trauma or repressing powerful, strong, good, beautiful parts of the self, in a misguided, oh, well, if I play weak, I play small, then I'll survive. When we go through big traumas, we either repress the event or we repress powerful parts of ourselves, or both. And also it can lead to keeping like stories, memories, aspects of stuff, like literally stuff into aspects of our body or our psyche, or even on our field. So if we're going to talk about spirit and higher self, you know, when we get traumatized, a part of us is shocked out. And sometimes that part of us doesn't even live in our body anymore. It can like live in our energy field. It can possibly live in someone else's body. So that's like where the shamanic perspective and soul retrieval comes in. Is it high for you guys still? So the idea that like, yes, we have bodies and trauma fragments are bodies. Yes, we have psyches and trauma fragments are psyches. And yes, we have souls or spirits and trauma fragments, those too. And that's something that the psychological model does not like to discuss. It's like a big fat, don't go there, that cray talk. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we'll do a group soul retrieval.
New migrants and refugees would want when they come to Western countries. So people used a whole range of strategies together, singly, sequentially, and they undertook religious rituals at the same time as taking pharmacology. They did rituals to appease the planets or the ancestors, all the effects of karma, not just personal karma but family karma. And they had different beliefs about the theories of causation, and so depending what they believed caused the symptoms or the condition, then they took that action. And the same is relevant. Just because someone comes to the West doesn't mean they leave all their beliefs aside. So there was a whole range of people that were consulted at the same time, and it could be the general physician, the psychiatrist, the psychologist, the astrologer, the clairvoyant, the shaman, the homeopath, traditional teachers, gurus, or even architectural specialists, because if the architecture in your home was inappropriate, then that could cause distress to your well-being. And this was one psychiatrist I met, an American psychiatrist. He was working at Harvard at the time. He was also a sensitive. I met him in Pondicherry, and he explained to me how the different remedies work. And he said allopathic medicine works with pharmacologically active ingredients. Herbal remedies using natural substances are also pharmacologically active. Acupuncture works on energy flows. And homeopathy treats like by like. But the patient is given a tiny dose of the same symptom, and the body learns to overcome the symptoms. And then there was Dr. Bach, who did the flower remedies, a British physician who was also a homeopath. And he said, why should we introduce toxins to the body? Why can't we just work with flower remedies? And they say flower remedies are the closest to the soul, so it's good to use them for psychological conditions. And I'll just read this, what he said. Flower remedies are the most positive and spiritually nourishing life form in the mineral and vegetable kingdoms. They work at the level of psychic consciousness, at the vibrational level of the true soul. So around the ashram in Pondicherry, and a lot of treatment was with flower remedies, although people still did want Western medicine for some things. Then on the left here we've got the psychiatrist that I met on that bench for tea in Oxford, Dr. Basu. And this was a Muslim cleric who'd been giving him patients for 10 years. And Dr. Basu said that the Western model of mental health didn't fit with Indian beliefs about the nature of human existence. And he said there was an underlying assumption in Western traditions that people were influenced only by postnatal experiences. So the psychology suggests that you're only influenced by things that happen after birth, whereas that just simply doesn't fit Indian beliefs, which include the planets, karma, the ancestors, parapsychological or supernatural things.